Okay, everyone, welcome to today's movie gathering. Very lovely to have you here. And today, the guidance had come in to watch Paul, Apostle of Christ. Now, before I actually get into the movie, for those that don't know what Movies for Enlightenment is basically movies in terms of the world. When you're watching movies in the world, movies can often be watched for the purpose of distracting away from the thoughts and emotions that are arising during the day. And so in regards to movies for enlightenment, we actually use movies to get in touch with the emotions and thoughts that are arising for us. So as we're watching a movie, we are training ourselves to just be able to observe what is happening mentally and what emotions are arising for us emotionally. And that gives us basically an inroads into what is being thought and what is being believed in the mind. With enlightenment, this is all about clearing out the thoughts, everything that you think and think you believe, in order to come to this tabula rasa state of mind. And for me, when I was going through my inner journey and my healing as well, was I would use movies, whatever topic I wanted to look at. So whether it was divine providence, whether it was, guilt, or seeing the self-concept as false, I would go through David's mwge.org and I would go through what movie kind of felt intuitively inspired for me to watch, and I would go through that movie and kind of have like this transformational experience watching the visual illustration and getting all of these insights and these ideas around how it would apply to my life and my journey of awakening. Along with when I was watching the movies as well, I would be paying attention to what thoughts were arising and what emotions were arising. Because when we're watching a movie, it's quite easily to, misidentify with the characters on the screen, that we just want to pay attention to if we are misidentifying with the characters on the screen, because this is symbolic with the whole journey of awakening. If we use our daily life and say that is the movie screen, we can apply the training, we can apply the mind training, we can transfer the training of watching a movie to our life here in this world on planet Earth. And we can use this experience, no matter what seems to be happening during the day, to just begin to take our perception our attention off of perception and back to the mind level, so we can begin to mind watch and slowly take our identification off of the characters on the screen as well, back to presence. And so this is why I love watching movies, and this is why we do these movie gatherings as well, just to be able to have, this new way of using movies rather than the ways that the world uses movies, which is for distraction from the thoughts and emotions, and just to, it's like an escapism, using it as an escapism for daily life. And so with this movie here today, Paul of Apostle of Christ, I absolutely love this movie. Now, a lot of you, being on this path of Course of Miracles, love Jesus movies. But this movie here is actually going to follow Paul, which was a disciple of Christ, of Jesus. And this movie is going to go deep because it's going to cover rules for decision. It's going to cover false cause and effect relationships. It's going to cover the script is written, and it's going to allow you to re-perceive death from the fruits of the Spirit, which is great. And so starting off, for those that don't know a lot about Paul, before Paul followed Jesus, Paul was a Roman. And back then, his Roman name was Saul of Tarsus. And so when Jesus basically was moving around and he was sending his disciples out to preach the gospel throughout the cities, Saul at this time, known as Saul of Tarsus, he was the one that was killing all of the disciples that would pass through the city. The as we know, when the ego encounters truth, it gets vicious and it gets very suspicious. And even so, that it goes so vicious that it attempts to remove your brother from this earth, seemingly. And so Saul, or Paul, he was the one that was going through and stoning those that would come through the city, preaching the gospel. Now, for those that haven't heard of the road to Damascus miracle, basically that was Paul's miracle. And on the road to Damascus, he was basically pursuing the disciples and by killing them. And basically he had this encounter with Jesus where there was a light so bright that he ended up going blind. And basically the Damascus story basically allowed Paul to go through his miracle story, which allowed him to basically, for lack of better words, convert or see the miraculous ways of Jesus, where he actually converted from being a Roman to being a disciple of Jesus. And this is going to be portrayed in the movie as well. And basically, Paul is actually described as like a bull. He goes full, like a bull in a china shop. He goes full bull no matter which way he goes. So when he was out killing the Romans, he was there going at it with 100% of his attention and focus. Just as when he was converted to being a Christian, he also put all of his commitment and attention and focus in that area as well. So, with Paul, he always gives 100%, no matter whether it's to killing the Christians or to actually being converted to a Christian and giving his full attention and full devotion to God. And so I think this is actually a beautiful movie, because this movie touches on so many topics in regards to the spiritual awakening, that this movie will actually provide you with a visual illustration of the fruits of the Spirit provided by Paul and Luke. Now, Luke, who is also portrayed in this movie, Luke is going to be the physician. I can't say the word, but you know what I'm talking about. The physician. And he is also going to take down Luke's notes in order to be compiled into books for later on generations. Now, as we first begin our journey into spiritual awakening, in terms of coming to consistent peace, because this movie here will basically show you that it is possible to be consistently peaceful and happy no matter what seems to be playing out on the screen. I mean, Paul, Apostle of Christ, this movie was set during the time where I think Jesus had by this time ascended, and Nero, the Emperor of Rome, was killing all of the Christians. If you were identified as a Christian, then you would be put up on the stakes and you would be crucified. Kind of like the Nazis and the Jews. If you were identified as a Jew back in World War II, then you would be put in the concentration camps and be killed. And it can be applied today as well. If you look at the vaccinations versus unvaccinations, if you are not vaccinated, then there can be this whole divide and conquer technique that's going on, where we want to be able to, through using this movie, we want to transcend that divide and conquer technique of the ego and be able to come out of this movie seeing that we are meant to be uniting with everyone. We are meant to be united and standing with our brothers and sisters rather than dividing our brothers and sisters, seeking out who is this and who is that. Because I can guarantee you, if you are wasting your time looking for placing labels on your brothers and sisters and dividing our brothers and sisters, you know, for example, in World War II, you know, you had a lot of people looking at, okay, are you a Jew or are you not a Jew? And while those that were like doing the divide and conquer technique, you know, by the time they had actually sorted who was who, you know, Hitler had basically killed and wiped out all of the Jews by then. And so this is basically a metaphor to convey here that if you are locked into dividing our brothers and sisters with labels and placing judgments upon them, then you are totally missing the point of who is pulling the strings. You know, it's like if you have a jar and you put two species of ants in the jar and you shake the jar and let the ants out, the ants are going to fight amongst each other because they do not realize who shook the jar. You know, to the ants, they are going to blame each other. No, you shook the jar, and they are going to fight amongst each other. Meanwhile, the bigger picture, you know, is what is being overlooked is who actually shook the jar. And this can be applied no matter what timeline you seem to be in, whether it's 2,000 years ago, in this movie with Nero, the Romans and the Christians, whether it's blacks and whites, whether it's Nazis and Jews, whether it's the vaccinated versus unvaccinated. You know, you want to be able to transcend this through through looking at who is actually pulling the strings. Now, in The Wizard of Oz, there was someone who was behind the curtain pulling all the strings, the wizard, right? And that's kind of the whole point of spirituality, is being able to pull back that curtain to see, who is actually pulling the strings of the thoughts and emotions that I seem to be experiencing in this world of perception. Because I can guarantee you, even though you may divide your brothers and put them into labels, you know, the ego is still going to be there in the mind, as the false cause of everything you seem to experience day to day today. So we want to be able to use this movie today to go back to the level of the mind, which is the level of the identification with the ego, and be able to look at it and be able to pluck it from the mind. And so what I want to start off reading here is actually the rules for decision, because as we are going through the journey, and as we're going through our day-to-day experiences of life as well, it can be kind of, you know, like back and forth when the mind seems to be split and it's experiencing the day-to-day experiences of life. You can kind of ask yourself, why am I experiencing so many emotions? Why am I experiencing this? Why am I experiencing that? It doesn't seem quite consistent. And Jesus is basically saying in the Course is that while the mind is misidentified with the ego has totally, you know, has complete amnesia about the level of the mind. And the ego has complete amnesia around basically the level of the mind. And so since the mind is now misidentified with the level of form, the mind now has all of these form goals that needs to meet in order to feel peaceful. Now, for example of this, you know, we can just take the usual experience of finding a car park. You know, you're driving in your car and you're going to the shops and you want to find a car park, and you find a car park, but all of a sudden someone else comes and cuts you off, and you're like, no, what? And all of a sudden there's this upset arising. Now the upset isn't quite seen in this moment that I have a desire, and I have a split desire in my mind of getting that parking space more than I want peace. This is why we are going to begin to unwind our minds from the level of perception and bring it back to the level of cause, which is the level of mind, being the level of misidentification with the ego. And we are going to step by step slowly bring our attention off of perception, using this movie as well to re-perceive cause and effect in terms of the world. And so I want to start off reading today Rules for Decision, which is chapter 30 in A Course in Miracles. And so whenever we seem to experience any roller coaster of emotions during our day, we can always come back to the rules for decision, because the rules for decision are basically going to allow us to remember that we always have the opportunity to decide what we want to experience. And the mind is always making decisions. However, because the mind seems to be so focused on the level of form, the mind kind of forgets about the level of mind and how there are only two choices to choose between on the level of the mind. But on the level of perception, these two choices kind of get projected out as if I have many, many decisions to make during the day on the level of the form, when really there are only two choices to ever make in your entire life. And so I'm going to begin reading the rules for decision now, which starts off by saying, decisions are continuous. You do not always know when you are making them, but with a little practice, with the ones you recognize, a set begins to form which you see through the rest. It is not wise to let yourself become preoccupied with every step you take. The proper set, adopted consciously each time you wake, will put you well ahead. And if you find resistance strong and dedication weak, you are not ready. It's okay. Do not fight yourself, but think about the kind of day you want and tell yourself there is a way in which this very day can happen just like that. And then try again to have the day that you want. 1. The outlook starts with this. Today, I will make no decisions by myself. This means that you are choosing not to be the judge of what to do. But it must also mean you will not judge the situations where you will be called upon to make response. For if you judge them, you have set the rules for how you should react to them. And then another answer cannot but produce confusion and uncertainty and fear. This is your major problem now. You still make up your mind and then decide to ask what you should do. And what you hear may not resolve the problem as you first saw it. Now, what does this really mean when it says you still make up your mind and then decide to ask what you should do? Well, let's say we are doing the dishes. I'm going to give you an example of what this is talking about. Let's say you are doing the dishes here, and you kind of, you pour the sink up with water and the dishwashing detergent, and you are doing the dishes, and all of a sudden, someone comes along and uses the dishes and makes them dirty again. And you have more dishes, and you're like, oh, please, excuse me, I'm doing the dishes. Why are you making more dishes for me? Now, this is what it's talking about. We have gone into the act of doing the dishes with no purpose. We haven't put our purpose out front. And then all of a sudden, we're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing the course. What is my purpose again? We seem to do things in the world without placing the purpose of forgiveness out front, without placing the purpose of peace out front, and then we totally forget what our purpose is. And then all of a sudden, we are in an upset, and then once we are in the upset, we're like, oh, wait a minute, what is my purpose again? Now, Jesus is saying this is the same as saying, okay, I'm going to go to the supermarket. So you tell your spouse, hey, I'm just going to go to the supermarket. So you hop in your car and you start driving, but all of a sudden, you forget where you're driving to. And so you spend hours and hours driving around aimlessly, nowhere, going nowhere. And you're like, wait a minute, where am I driving to again? This is what Jesus is saying is, He's saying a mind that does not place the purpose out front will accomplish nothing. All you will experience is upset because you do not know what you want. You can even apply this to doubt during the day. Jesus says doubt is impossible if you do not, if you know what you want. If you place your purpose out front, being forgiveness, then you will not experience doubt, because forgiveness and doubt don't go together. Forgiveness and problems don't go together. Forgiveness and lack of peace don't go together, which is why when we are doing the dishes, we want to, even if it's, whatever it seems to be doing, you're doing it during the day, we want to place that one purpose of forgiveness out front. That way, if we are doing the dishes and someone comes along and makes more dishes for us, we're like, great, this is an opportunity for forgiveness. This is a forgiveness opportunity for me to see if anything is going to come up, to see if any egoic thoughts are going to arise, to see if any egoic emotions are going to arise for me. Because if we don't place that one purpose out front, then you can see that you will not perceive this situation as a forgiveness lesson. You will misperceive the situation with the ego, which will be a means of attacking your brother and using your brother for your own peace of mind. And so that's what basically that section means. I am going to carry on. You still make up your mind and then decide to ask what you should do. And what you hear may not resolve the problem as you first saw it. This leads to fear because it contradicts what you perceive, and so you feel attacked and therefore angry. There are rules by which this will not happen, but it does occur at first while you are learning how to hear. So basically, our inner wisdom is basically saying it's okay to feel this. When you are beginning the spiritual journey and you are going through the mind training process, you are going to forget, and that is okay. But however, if you do forget, this is where the next part comes in. Throughout the day, at any time you think of it and have a quiet moment of reflection, tell yourself again the kind of day you want. Oh, okay, sorry, I got angry at you while I was doing the dishes, but I simply forgot my purpose. What kind of day did I want again? The feelings you would have, the things you want to happen to you, and the things you would experience, and say, if I make no decisions by myself, this is the day that will be given me. These two procedures, practiced well, will serve to let you be directed without fear, for opposition will not first arise and then become a problem in itself. So when it says, I make no decisions by myself, I had to go through this myself when I was going through my inner healing. I basically was going through the day and I would ask the inner wisdom, what do you actually mean when you say, I will make no decisions by myself? And what I received back was, well, imagine you're going into a movie theater and you're going to a movie theater to watch a movie. You sit down in your chair and in front of you, you have the one white movie theater screen. And all of a sudden the movie comes on and you're watching the movie. And all of a sudden someone on the movie theater screen is asking you if you prefer ice cream or chocolate. And on the movie theater screen, you're like, this is a big decision. I don't know which one to pick. Jesus is basically saying, or your inner wisdom is basically saying, if you make a decision by yourself, what this basically means is you are trying to choose between two illusions. For example, someone on the movie theater screen comes to you and says, do you prefer ice cream or chocolate? Now, the ice cream and chocolate is just part of the one white movie theater screen. It's part of the one false image. But if you are getting caught up into choosing the right one or choosing the wrong one, which one should I go for? Rather than just coming at this decision with peace, and no matter what you seem to choose, you choose peace, you are getting stuck into choosing between illusions. And this is what Jesus is pointing to when he says, I will make no decisions by myself. Because if you're making decisions by yourself, what this basically means is I'm trying to pick out one part of the wall and say this part of the wall is better than this part of the wall when it's just one wall. You know, the wall's the same. But if you're saying chocolate is better than this, and my peace depends on getting this rather than this, and I'm trying to avoid this, then basically that's what that means where it says I am making decisions by myself. And this is all going to be an inroads into coming back to the levels of the mind, the level of the mind to begin to see, I only actually have two options. While the mind seems to be split, there are two options on the level of the mind. This is the ego or the spirit. This is peace, love, whatever word you want to use. There are only ever two options on the level of the mind, which then the ego projects onto the world and says, now you have many options during the day. You can decide whether you want to go to this town, or you can decide whether you want to marry this woman. If you can decide, you know, what kind of ice cream you want, but this is all part of a prearranged script. Now we're getting into causation and mind rather than the world, because the ego can say, yes, you can choose all of this, but what the inner wisdom is basically saying, which I'll get into after I have read this, is everything that you seem to experience during the day is just part of the prearranged script, part of the past, it's part of the movie. But I'll get more into that after this. And so carrying on here, it says, but there will be times when you have already judged. Now the answer will provoke attack unless you quickly straighten out your mind to want an answer that will work. Be certain this has happened if you feel yourself unwilling to sit by and ask to have the answer given you. This means you have decided by yourself and cannot see the question. Now you need a quick restorative before you can ask again. Remember, once again, the day you want, and recognize that something has occurred that is not part of it. Then realize that you have asked a question by yourself and must have set an answer in your terms. Then say, I have no question. I forgot what to decide. This cancels out the terms that you have set and lets the answer show you what the question must have really been. Try to observe this rule without delay, despite your opposition, for you have already gotten angry, and your fear of being answered in a different way from what your version of the question asks will gain momentum until you believe the day you want is one in which you get your answer to your question. And you will not get it, for it would destroy the day by robbing you of what you really want. This can be very hard to realize. When once you have decided by yourself the rules that promise you a happy day, yet this decision still can be undone by simple methods that you can accept. If you are so unwilling to receive, you cannot even let your question go, you can begin to change your mind with this. At least I can decide I do not like what I feel now. This much is obvious and paves the way for the next step. Having decided that you do not like the way that you feel, what could be easier than to continue with, and so I hope I have been wrong. This works against the sense of opposition and reminds you that help is not being thrust upon you, but is something that you want and that you need, because you do not like the way that you feel. This tiny opening will be enough to let you go ahead with just a few more steps you need to let yourself be helped. And basically, he goes on to say, I want another way to look at this. And perhaps there is another way to look at this. What can I lose by asking? And so what is really being said here is, if I am doing the dishes and I forget that I want a peaceful day, and I forget that I hold out the purpose of peace out front, no matter what seems to be happening, and I am doing the dishes for the purpose now of having the dishes done and be kept clean more than I want peace, then I am going to experience an upset, because I have a split desire in my mind of wanting the dishes done and wanting the dishes cleaned more than I want peace. But the inner wisdom is basically saying here is, until you perceive that you have a split desire in your mind of wanting the dishes done more than you want peace, then the ego will misperceive the entire situation and think that its salvation will lie in the dishes being cleaned. And so it will attack your brother or sister, the one who is making more dishes and doing the dishes, in order to get them to change, in order to be peaceful. But what is being said here is, you can think of it as, your inner wisdom saying, beloved, you do not need anything in the world to change to be peaceful. All you really need to do is go back into the mind, shift your attention off of perception back to your own mind, so you can take responsibility for what you are thinking and believing. And basically what you are thinking and believing, and that split desire that you have in mind, is, I want the dishes to be done and kept clean more than I want peace. This is the split desire in mind. That's in your own mind. But then the ego projects this split desire onto the level of the form and says, right, now my peace and happiness is now dependent on keeping the dishes clean and not having more dishes for me to clean. So no one better be making more dishes for me, because if you do, you are going to feel my wrath. And so this is why this is beautiful, because now we are having this opportunity to use triggers in order to get clear on what is going on in my mind that I need to look at. What is this for? And so this rules for decision is an inroads into getting clear onto, wow, everything I seem to experience is really my own choosing. I am not a victim of the world. I am not a victim of anything in the world. And this is the gateway inwards into experiencing day-to-day experiences in peace, regardless of what is going on. That gateway is just remembering to hold this purpose of forgiveness out front, this purpose of peace out front, no matter what seems to be happening, whether you are doing the dishes, whether you are talking to your family, whether you are at work. No matter what you seem to be doing, you can always hold the mental goal of peace out front, regardless. And if you hold the mental peace, that focus of peace out front, then you will see everything working together for the good, for your own peace of mind. And this is really getting into causation being on the level of the mind rather than the level of the world. Because when the mind is split and misidentified with the ego has its own version, which we call spurious cause and effect relationships. And so the ego basically says, okay, now that you have separated from your source and you are in this world of time and space, you're here all alone with this individual body. Now on the movie theater screen, there are causes and there are effects on the movie theater screen. This part of the wall affects this part of the wall, and this part of the wall affects this part of the wall. So what is an example of what I'm talking about here? Well, think of the sun. The sun, being the cause, affects the body and makes it burn. Effect. Cause, effect, being on the level of the movie theater screen. If you think of it in terms of work, if you do not work, cause, you do not get money, then you will end out on the street. Effect. No money, cause, effect, ending out on the street. No matter what the world, no matter what you seem to go through in the world, the ego always has its spurious cause and effect relationships. And these spurious cause and effect relationships always have to do with placing cause onto the effect and making the cause, which is the level of mind, onto the effect. Basically, the ego is saying whatever happens in the world now affects your state of mind. Rather than I choose everything I seem to experience and I am not a victim, the ego says, forget about that. You are completely a victim. You are a victim of the person cutting you off in traffic. You are a victim of everything. You are a victim of the sun. You are a victim of C-19. You are a victim of viruses. You are a victim of not having enough money. Everything. Basically, that's the whole motive of the ego, is you are a victim. And what this mind training is all about is allowing you to reperceive that, hey, maybe, just maybe, I am not a victim of the world. And maybe everything that I seem to experience is what I seem to choose and I want to experience. And so even though the mind experiences lots of upsets when it is split during the day, what the inner wisdom is basically saying is, if you're experiencing an upset, you actually want to be upset. And through this talk and through this movie, we are going to go so deep into the mind that you are going to be able to begin to see how I am choosing the upset and why I actually want to be upset. And so this actually comes into, if we are beginning to reperceive cause and effect, going from I am a victim and the world is the cause and affects my state of mind, through the mind training, we are reversing cause and effect through going through the levels of the mind, or your self-inquiry, which will begin to allow you to see that the only level of causation is the mind, and the world is the effect of the mind. Now, an example to convey what I'm saying here is, every time you go to bed at night and have a dream, you fall asleep in your bed, the mind falls asleep and starts to have this nighttime dream. But where is the nighttime dream happening? In the mind of the dreamer. And so the mind, you can see, makes up the entire dream, makes up the entire dream world, the dream figure, and then it misidentifies with the dream figure in the dream world, and all of a sudden, I'm having a nightmare. I'm having a nightmare. I'm reacting to the dream and I'm having all of these roller coaster of emotions, even though the mind that is having the dream is the sole cause of the dream itself. How can it be a victim of the dream if it is the cause of the dream and the dream world is just as a projection of the mind, of the sleeping mind? And so this is a great inroads to basically beginning to question, am I actually a victim? I seem to be upset, but am I actually a victim? And this is going to be your inroads into going deeper towards what is happening mentally with what is being thought, what is being believed, and the core desire on the level of the mind of what is being focused upon. Because remember, the experience of enlightenment is going into an experience of non-duality. Victim and oppressor implies two. It implies duality. And so we are going beyond victim and oppressor because we are going beyond duality. And the inner wisdom in the course says, beware of the temptation to perceive yourself unfairly treated. Now, why? Why is this so important? Because this is being used to undo the belief in victimization. If, using the example of a nighttime dream, the mind falls asleep and dreams a dream, how can you be unfairly treated if the dreamer of the dream is the sole cause of the dream and it's not at the mercy of the dream world? And so I'm going to begin to read here lesson 6 and lesson 7, because this is going to totally redefine all upsets for you. Now, whenever we think of upsets, we need to begin to question these upsets in order to get to the root assumptions and root beliefs underneath the surface level experiences of the world. And so, as we know, perception is out. If we use the levels of mind, perception is out on the very outer ring. And underneath perception, you have emotions. Another way of saying that is perception is an effect of emotion. Now, what is underneath emotion but your thoughts? What is underneath thoughts but the beliefs? And what is at the core of the beliefs apart from your desire or your focus or your attention? Now, if you have a split focus, if you have a split desire, if your attention is split for something other than peace, then you are going to experience the results of that, which will be a belief of being a victim, a belief which is basically coming back to the core belief in separation. And then the thoughts that are going to be experienced from there are going to be thoughts of separation, attack, judgment, anger, jealousy, fear, basically. The emotions that are going to be experienced are going to be fearful, distorted emotions of the world. And the perceptions of the world are going to be fearful, unloving perceptions of the world where I perceive I am being attacked. I perceive I am being victimized. And so this is why we want to get clear on what is going on the level of the mind, so we can get clear on why I am actually choosing the upset that I seem to be experiencing. And so lesson number 6 here, which is a great lesson for if you are going through an upset, you always want to remember lesson 1 through to 7 or 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Where you can actually go through these lessons, and these lessons will be quick reminders for you to actually re-perceive the upset. And so lesson number 6 here says, I am upset because I see something that is not there. Ooh, ooh. Even just reading the title, what does that even mean? I am upset because I see something that is not there. Well, before I go actually into the lesson, let's talk about quantum physics for a little bit. And as I look at the date here, it's the 11th. I'm recording this on the 11th of the 11th. Just a quick side note. Just caught my eye. And so let's talk about quantum physics. Quantum physics, quantum physics is basically saying, even though, this looks solid, that this, what we would call a cup, looks solid, the smaller you go down into the particles and molecules, you can see that this is really just, well, you can't see with your physical eyes, but what quantum physics is basically telling us is that this is made up of atoms. And atoms vibrate together at a certain frequency in order for things to appear solid. But what are atoms made out of? Well, quantum physicists will tell you atoms are made out of 99% air, nothing. It's made out of nothing. It's empty space, they will tell you. An atom is made out of empty space. But wait a minute, if an atom is made out of empty space, how is this solid? How is this cup even here? And so, using quantum physics, you can kind of begin to reperceive everything in a new way, shifting from Newtonian to quantum physics. You can begin to even question, wait a second here. If this cup and if everything is just made out of atoms at the quantum level, then how is this even solid? Is this even here to begin with? And so you can begin to see that just like a nighttime dream, even though there is no real dream world or dream figure in the dream, the mind can appear I don't even know what I'm saying here. The mind can project images into the mind, can project images and make things appear real, even though there is really no substance to it. And so this is basically what this lesson is pointing to. We really want to start to perceive everything, shifting from the Newtonian way of looking at it, everything is solid, to shifting to quantum physics, where we are getting closer towards spirituality now, because this is saying, well, even though this is made up of atoms, is this really here? Even though I can bang my hand against it, if it's made of atoms, out of nothing, how is this actually here? And so this lesson basically says, I am upset because I see something that is not there. The exercises with this idea are very similar to the preceding ones. Again, it is not necessary to name both the form of upset, anger, fear, worry, depression, and so on, and the perceived source very specifically for an application of the idea. For example, I am angry at fill in the blank because I see something that is not there. I am worried about fill in the blank because I see something that is not there. Today's idea is useful for application to anything that seems to upset you and can profitably be used throughout the day for that purpose. However, the 3 or 4 practice periods which are required should be preceded by a minute or so of mind searching, as before, and the application of the idea to each upsetting thought uncovered in the search. Again, if you resist applying the idea to something upsetting, to some upsetting thoughts more than to others, remind yourself of 2 cautions stated in the previous lessons. There are no small upsets. They are all equally disturbing to my peace of mind. And I cannot keep this form of upset and let the others go. For the purposes of these exercises, then, I regard them all as the same. Now, why is this so important? Well, now we are beginning to talk about the belief in separation. Underneath all of your upsets, whether it's worries, concerns, fears, what is the core basis of those upsets? The core basis of that upset is that there is a world there to begin with. And what this lesson is basically saying is that I am upset because I see something that is not there. And it's very upsetting to see something that's not there. Do you know how upsetting that is? Oh, I'm seeing something that's not there. Whenever we have any specific problems, relationship problems, financial problems, whatever the problems seem to be on the level of the form, they are just a projection of the one problem that is in the mind, and that is the belief in separation. What does that basically mean? Well, if I am in a movie theater screen watching a movie, and the movie is being projected from behind me onto the movie theater screen, and I am upset at something on the movie, then you can begin to question, why am I actually upset? The movie's not even there to begin with. Why would this upset be necessary unless I believe that what I believe the movie that was going on was really happening? There would be no basis for upsets unless I believed that what I thought was happening was really happening. And this is what the inner wisdom is basically saying. It's basically allowing you to begin to question, why am I actually upset? Is it because of this, or is it because of something deeper? Is it because of something in the mind that seems to be projected out onto the level of the form? And so as we're getting into causation here and getting into seeing things that are not really there, we can begin to question even, we're beginning to unravel everything here, because the ego is like this spider web, and everything seems to be connected to everything else. And so as you deconstruct one part of the spider web, you have to kind of deconstruct all of it in order to see its falsity. And so as we are getting into victim and victimizer and reversing cause and effect, you know, you can basically say as well, the ego is telling me that I can basically go anywhere that I want. That's no illusion. That's basically, you know, I have choice in whether I raise up my arm, whether I can marry this person or that person. But basically, what the intuition and our inner teacher is basically allowing us to reperceive is actually, no, this is part of the script is written. Now, the script is written is basically has emphasis on the last word written, which is basically means that it's past. Just like when you're watching a movie, the entire movie has already been acted out in a controlled environment. It's already been put onto the film. It's already been, and it's just being projected out onto a movie theater screen now. But when we are watching the movie, we tend to forget that it's already finished. We tend to forget that it has already been acted out. And so whenever we seem to be watching a movie and we have any upset or concern at all, you can begin to see how there is an assumption that I believe what is happening is actually happening, that what I believe is happening is actually there. And two, what the second belief that we want to look at is I believe that the movie is really present. I don't believe that it has really been shot, filmed, and present and is just over and gone. You know, the inner wisdom in the Course says we stand at the end point, looking back and reviewing mentally what has already gone by. And so the script is written is basically going to come out in the next lesson, lesson 7, which I will go ahead and read to you because this is crucial here. I am upset because I see something that is not there. And now lesson 7 says, I see only the past. And it begins to say, this idea is particularly, I'm unlearning English, so just bear with me. This idea is particularly difficult to believe at first. Yet it is the one rationale for all of the preceding ones. It is the reason why nothing that you see means anything. It is the reason why you have given everything you see or the meaning that it has for you. It is the reason why you do not understand anything you see. It is the reason why your thoughts do not mean anything and why they are like the things you see. It is the reason why you are never upset for the reason you think. It is the reason why you are upset because you see something that is not there. Old ideas about time are very difficult to change. Because everything you believe is rooted in time and depends on your not learning these new ideas about it, yet that is precisely why you need new ideas about time. This first time idea is not really so strange as it may sound at first. Look at a cup, for example. How handy, we have a cup here. Look at a cup, for example. Do you see a cup? Or are you merely reviewing your past experiences of picking up a cup, being thirsty, drinking from a cup, feeling the rim of a cup against your lips, having breakfast, and so on? Are you not aesthetic? Are not your aesthetic reactions to the cup too based on past experiences? How else would you know whether or not this cup will break if you drop it? What do you know about this cup except what you learned in the past? You would have no idea what this cup is except for your past learning. Do you then really see it? Look about you. This is equally true of whatever you look at. Acknowledge this by applying the idea for today indiscriminately to whatever catches your eye. For example, I see only the past in this pencil. Do not linger over any one thing in particular, but remember to omit nothing specifically. Glance briefly at each subject and then move on to the next. 3 or 4 practice periods with someone, we don't need to read that. And so you can basically see That if you really understood that you saw only the past, imagine waking up in the morning being like, oh, this day has already unfolded and I am going to just be like a little child on Christmas and go through this day and see what has already unfolded for me. See the gifts that have been bestowed upon me that I am that I get to use for my own forgiveness lessons. Remember, I see only the past is a thing to be joyful about. You can use it as a permission slip to relax. If everything is already done, then you can just relax. I mean, think about our day-to-day experience of the world. Why is the ego so controlling? Why is the ego so trying to micromanage everything? Why is the ego so worried about everything? Because the ego says, if you do not do something, then it will never get done. If you don't put your effort into anything, then, things the whole world will fall apart because nothing will happen. But basically, what the inner wisdom is saying here is, I see only the past, or the script is written as being used as a permission slip to allow your mind to relax into the flow, into the intuitive flow. Because then you can begin to experience whatever is meant to happen will always happen to you. Whatever is not meant to happen will never happen to you. Why does the ego get so caught up in being wrong and right? Oh, I feel so wrong. I did this and I feel wrong. The ego is caught up in getting in this dualistic mode of thinking of right and wrong. And why is it so going towards being right and so avoiding being wrong? Basically, the inner wisdom is basically saying, hey, you don't have to worry about being right or wrong. The script is written. Whatever seems to happen on the movie theater screen couldn't have happened any other way. So whenever you are experiencing the ego's thoughts of, oh, if only something in the past were different, I would be so much happier. The inner wisdom is saying, beloved, you can gently hand those thoughts to me. Nothing could have been any different in the past. Nothing can be any different about where you seem to be in the script in this moment. Whenever you feel like you're not living up to your true potential, whenever you feel like you should be doing more, whenever you feel like you should be, you're not in the right place, that you can kind of use this idea of the script is written, or I see only the past, and begin to use this to basically overlook the ego's false ideas, which provide you with a roller coaster of emotions. So say, for example, you're going through your day and all of a sudden you have like this ego whiplash, and all of a sudden you're feeling wrong. You feel like you should be doing more. You feel like you're not in the right place. If you just remember that the script is written and you tell yourself, wait a minute, whatever the ego is telling me now doesn't feel good. What is a new idea that I can kind of latch onto in my mind? Oh, the script is written. Oh, yes. Everything is happening perfectly, just like in a movie. When I watch a movie, everything's as it's meant to be. Nothing is out of place. Then you can kind of use that idea to nullify the ego's idea of you're doing something wrong, you should be doing more. All of these thoughts of separation, which are really false. And basically, this is all being used as a gateway to allow us to just be able to mind watch, to be able to observe the ego and just see it as false. Because there is often a temptation on the spiritual journey to basically think that the spiritual journey is about getting rid of the ego. Oh yes, if only I get rid of the ego, and I don't like how I'm feeling right now, so if only I can get rid of those emotions, then I will be peaceful. Then I will be enlightened. Then I will have a clear mind once I get rid of those egoic emotions. That's the inner wisdom is saying, beloved, forgiveness is just a way of looking. It's just a way of seeing the false as false. It's not about getting rid of the ego, because as soon as you buy into the ego's idea of getting rid of itself, you have made the ego real. And how can you get rid of something that you make real in your own mind? You can't. And so forgiveness, on the other hand, merely waits, watches, and does nothing. Forgiveness, on the other hand, allows you to just be able to observe what is arising for you and be able to go through it joyfully, because you know that whatever you perceive is not you. It's just the ego. And so the whole point of spirituality really is just beginning to observe the ego and be able to step out of the ego through seeing its falsity. But while the mind is caught up in trying to get rid of the ego, it's going to you're going to set up the condition for failure, because one, the ego is an illusion, so it can't be killed, it can't be gotten rid of, so to speak. But what you can do is just see the false as false. Forgiveness is just looking upon what is arising, realizing that it's false, and then overlooking it. So, for example, as I was saying before, when the ego chucks up ideas like I am wrong, all you have to do is just be able to look at this idea and be like, my true self can't be saying this, so this must be from the ego by the way that I feel, because it doesn't feel really loving. And so I can overlook this idea and exchange it for a new idea. And what is a new idea that is more reflective and more symbolic of our true self, which can be used as a permission slip for peace, which is, oh, everything is happening perfectly. The script is written. And so this is basically means when it says, I see only the past. It's basically using this as a permission slip to just allow the mind to relax and not get so caught up in, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? What is the right way of doing it? What is the guidance? Am I getting the guidance right? Am I getting the guidance wrong? La, 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 la. Spirituality is meant to be light. It's meant to be light-hearted and not so serious. And so we will begin to put the movie on now, but we'll come back after the movie to describe, because this movie also goes into reperceiving death. And through this movie, you'll be able to see how Paul and Luke be able to seem to go through everything that they go through. Paul was in prison. He was beaten. He didn't have, he wasn't living the most luxurious life, but he went through everything with the fruits of the Spirit. He went through everything in joy, with faith, and knowing that everything that was happening for the good of everything. And so this movie is going to be a visual illustration for you of how you can go through everything in joy, whether you seem to be going through pain. Whatever seems to be arising for you, this movie is going to be able to demonstrate and be a visual illustration of how you can go through it in peace, and how you can go through it in joy, and how you can go through it in acceptance, rather than trying to get rid of things that the ego would call not being liked. Okay. Wow, what a movie. What a movie. Now, of course, if we watch that movie with the ego, it can seem like a very dark movie, but using what was demonstrated in the film, it's very beautifully shows how you can go through anything with peace, with certainty, with joy. Because we're really going for a freedom of mind here. Even today in this time, with everything going on, there's lockdowns, we're really going for a freedom of mind. So whether the body seems to be in lockdown or not in lockdown, it doesn't really matter. Whether you're locked down and the body is locked down. Over here in New Zealand, I think we've been locked down here for three months already. You can only go out for like exercise and go to get the groceries, but all the shops are being closed. So, with the freedom of mind, we are going for an expansive mindset where we can be happy regardless of what seems to be happening in the world, regardless of what seems to be happening on the movie theater screen. And I reckon that movie was so beautiful for demonstrating how everything worked together for the good as well. With I forgot his name already, but the Roman guard there, he was there playing his role perfectly. And Paul and Luke, they could have not helped him with his daughter. They could have said no. But the love that we have, the experience of love that we are being called into is so expansive and so unconditional that we, as Paul was saying, the only way that you can overcome fear is with forgiveness and love. We are here to be the light of the world and love everyone regardless of what role they seem to be playing. When everyone shoots a movie, at the end of the movie, no matter what part they seem to play, they all come together and be like, oh, that was such a great movie. Everyone played their roles perfectly. And there's a big celebration at the end of the movie because everything came together to create the movie. Everyone played their parts perfectly. And we have this opportunity now where we can go through whatever seems to be happening in the movie with joy and with this clueless state of mind, with this innocent state of mind that one is being called into, which is what the mind training is for, which is what forgiveness is for. Now, sometimes it can be implied that if I forgive this, then it may, be taken out of the script. I may not need to experience it anymore, but really, forgiveness is just for another way of seeing. It's just another way of seeing. Forgiveness allows you to go through what the movie provides in peace and joy, no matter what seems to be happening. And if we look at the crucifixion, if we look at Paul's life, they weren't luxury lives, They weren't basically, that they were in a cell. The bodies were crucified, the bodies were beaten, the bodies were starved. They weren't really what we would call these days luxury lives, but the fruits of the Spirit allowed them to go through it with peace, with certainty, with faith, with love. And I'm not talking about a love that is a conditional love. If you do this for me, then I will love you. No, what the love I'm talking about is, unconditional. It's about loving your enemies, regardless. If you are slapped on the cheek, just turn your cheek. What did Jesus say? He said, be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Everything that you seem to experience, you're going through with me now. And so, this is an opportunity to come into your function, being the light of the world, to go through everything you seem to experience with joy. But before we come into this experience, we have to go through the initial darkness of the mind, which is where forgiveness comes into play. And as we are applying that forgiveness, as we are applying the practical application of forgiveness, lots and lots of synchronicities come into play, lots and lots of miracles come into play, which help shift the mind from fear to love. And this is all working together for the good of your own awakening, for the good of your own freedom of mind. I mean, take Gandhi, for example. Gandhi was traveling around and he was even locked up. Gandhi was locked up, but he was still passionate and sharing the joy with he was sharing vegan recipes with the fellow inmates, passing them through the bars. This is the freedom of mind that we are going for. And it's, peace of mind is no small gift. An expansive love is no small gift. And what I want to read here is lesson 50 and 76 from A Course in Miracles. Lesson 50 is I am sustained by the love of God. And lesson 76 is I am under no laws but God's. So lesson 50 here. What's beautiful as well, I loved how Paul said at the very end there, you are completely known by God and you are completely loved. There is nothing you seem to experience here on this experience of earth that spirit does not know about. You are so completely known. All of your troubles, all of your concerns, all of your worries are known already. And yet you are so completely loved that life or divine providence will provide every single need until you realize that you have no needs. And so lesson 50 here, I am sustained by the love of God, is going to reinterpret what we believe we are sustained by in this world here. And so this starts off by saying, here is the answer to every problem that will confront you today and tomorrow and throughout time. In this world, you believe you are sustained by everything but God. Your faith is placed in the most trivial and insane symbols, pills, money, protective clothing, influence, prestige, being liked, knowing the right people, and an endless list of forms of nothingness that you endow with magical powers. All these things are your replacements for the love of God. All these things are cherished to ensure a body identification. They are songs of praise to the ego. Do not put your faith in the worthless. It will not sustain you. Only the love of God will protect you in all circumstances. It will lift you out of every trial and raise you high above all the perceived dangers of this world into a climate of perfect peace and safety. It will transport you into a state of mind that nothing can threaten, nothing can disturb, and where nothing can intrude upon the eternal calm of the Son of God. Song of God, same thing. Put not your faith in illusions. They will fail you. Put all of your faith in the love of God within you, eternal, changeless, and forever unfailing. This is the answer to whatever confronts you today. Through the love of God within you, you can resolve all seeming difficulties without effort and ensure confidence. Tell yourself this often today. It is a declaration of release from the belief in idols. It is your acknowledgement of the truth about yourself. Let no idle or foolish thoughts enter to disturb the holy mind of the Son of God. Such is the kingdom of heaven, and such is the resting place where your Father has placed you. Now, in my experience, I got to face all of my fears around this as well, because from 2017, I left my job. And so, in the world's terms, leaving a job is like, what? You don't leave your job unless you have another new job to go into. So, when I was asked what I would be doing next, I didn't really have an answer, because I knew I was being called to be in demonstration of another way of being in this experience. And so when I left my job in 2017, I had to go through all of the ego's darkness that it would bring up for me, all of the hypothetical thoughts of ending out on the street, all of the hypothetical thinking of not making it in this world. Yet, to this day, it's been, for nearly 5 years since I left my job, and I have not ended out on the street. So in 2019, when I went to go out traveling with no worldly support, just letting life provide, I had to face all of that darkness initially, but it wasn't until I really got to travel and all of the signs and symbols showed up for me. Now, good thing we have social media these days because, when I was traveling, I took a lot of photos and I took a lot of photos of what was showing up for me. And they're all plastered on Instagram now. So you can go through my Instagram and look at all of the symbols that showed up for me. And you can basically see my entire journey on Instagram there and see of all of the miracles that showed up, hear about all of the stories that people were sharing when they were traveling with me. And, it's very beautiful because that type of practical application allows the mind to, sink back into peace. It's like a permission slip which allows the mind to rest in this world of restlessness. And so lesson 76 here, which I will continue reading, is called I am under no laws but God's. It says, we have observed before how many senseless things we have seen to you to be salvation. Each has imprisoned you with laws as senseless as itself. You are not bound by them. Yet, to understand this is so, you must first realize salvation lies not there. While you would seek for it in things that have no meaning, you bind yourself to laws that make no sense. Thus, do you seek to prove salvation is where it is not. Today, we will be glad, for you cannot prove it. For if you could, you would forever seek salvation where it is not, and never find it. The idea for today tells you once again how simple is salvation. Look for it where it waits for you, and there it will be found. Look nowhere else, for it is nowhere else. Think of the freedom and the recognition that you are not bound by all the strange and twisted laws you have set up to save you. You really think that you would starve unless you have stacks of green paper strips and piles of metal discs? You really think a small round pellet or some fluid pushed into the veins through a sharpened needle would ward off disease and death? You really think you are alone unless another body is with you? It is insanity to think these things. You call them laws and put them under different names in a long catalogue of rituals that have no use and serve no purpose. You think you must obey the laws of medicine, of economics, and of health. Protect the body, the ego says, and you will be saved. These are not laws, but madness. The body is endangered by the mind that hurts itself. The body suffers just in order that the mind will fail to see it is a victim of itself. The body's suffering is a mask the mind holds up to hide what really suffers. It would not understand it is its own enemy, that it attacks itself and wants to die. It is from this your laws would save the body. It is for this you would think you are a body. There are no laws except the laws of God, which is the law of love. This needs repeating over and over until you realize it applies to everything that you have made in opposition to God's will. Your magic has no meaning. What it is meant to save does not exist. Only what it is meant to hide will save you. The laws, it's 11:11. It's 11:11 a.m. on the 11th of the 11th. As I read this. Perfect time. The laws of God can never be replaced. We will devote today to rejoicing that this is so. It is no longer a truth that we would hide. We realize instead it is a truth that keeps us free forever. Magic imprisons, but the laws of God make free. The light has come, because there are no laws but His. We will begin the longer practice periods today, which with a short review of the different kinds of laws we have believed we must obey. These would include, for example, the laws of nutrition, of immunization, of medication, and of the body's protection in innumerable ways. Think further. You believe in the laws of friendship and good friendships and reciprocity. Perhaps you even think that there are laws which set forth what is God's and what is yours. Many religions have been based on this. They would not save, but damn in heaven's name. Yet they are no more strange than other laws you hold must be obeyed to make you safe. And if you want to read on there, there's just a few more sections there that you are more than welcome to read. And that is lesson 76 of the workbook. I am under no laws but God's. Because this totally, why do we work? So we don't end out on the street. Why do we do everything that we do? To protect the body. The number one question I seem to get these days is, are you vaccinated or are you not vaccinated? And my question is, I am light. You can't vaccinate light and you can't unvaccinate light, because being vaccinated or not vaccinated applies to the body. But if we are light, if we are spirit, then that totally transcends the dualistic thinking that the ego puts up. Are you in this category or are you in this category? Well, thank God that we are above the categories. We are above the divide and conquer techniques of the ego. And this is what I love about the movie, because this movie basically allows us to reperceive death even. Jesus in the Course says, some will lay the body aside to increase their helpfulness. What? Increase their helpfulness? Death to the world seems like loss. And here you have Jesus. Some will lay aside the body to increase their helpfulness. There's no middle ground between the thinking of the world and the ways of spirit. And what I want to read here, this will be my last reading for today, is someone wrote to me and they were going through lesson 163, I believe, which is called There Is No Death. And so I wanted to read what they wrote to me. And I also wanted to read what came through to reply to them as well. Because, when we often think of death, looking at the false cause effect relationship that we were previous to the movie, it could be something like the ego may chuck up something like, well, if only you hadn't smoked previously in your life, you wouldn't be facing these body complications later on. But what the inner wisdom is saying is, no, beloved, the script is written. It wasn't the smoking that was a consequence of the body complications later on. It was just a script. Whenever you buy into the ego's questions of why did they do that? It's the script. Why did they leave the fridge open? It's the script. Why are they snoring? It's the script. It's very easy to disregard the ego's wise questions, because really the ego's questions are more like statements. They imply the separation happened. I am an ego. Now please tell me why they left the fridge door open. Why did they leave me? It's more of a statement where it says, the separation happened. I am an ego. Now please tell me why they left me. All of the ego's questions in this world are mere statements which basically underneath that statement assume that the separation has happened. And this movie allowed us to basically re-perceive death as loss to more of gain, and it's something beautiful. Now, I'm not saying that we should all go out and commit suicide. That's sort of not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that if you are beyond the body, then death is really impossible, because death only applies to the body. And so I had a beloved write to me, and they said, I am working through A Course in Miracles lesson 163 today. What are your thoughts on the lesson, There Is No Death? We have been talking for some time now, so feel free to give it to me straight. And basically what came through for me to reply, which was very beautiful, was, dearest friend, it is such a joy to hear from you. Thank you so much for writing. Initially, in the world's terms, one is taught that death has to do with the body, that a body is born, lives a life in between, and then someday dies. To the true self, which is formless spirit, this definition of death is completely backwards and upside down. So much so that the true self would use the following metaphor with me. To think of death as being of the body is the same as saying that your mobile device is birthed or made, has time to live a life, works for money and for its survival, sometimes getting sick, and then eventually laying down its life to die and be buried in its phone case in the ground. This metaphor is used to point to how nonsensical it is to think of these things of a phone, that it can have an autonomous life of its own. The mind that is asleep and dreaming has given causation to the level of the form, and has totally forgotten about the user of the phone behind the phone itself, and which the phone responds to. In this lesson, the spiritual self is pulling back the definition of death from the physical level of being about bodies to the mind level. Here, a reinterpretation of death is given as being synonymous with the ego, the false sense of self. It is reminding the mind that there has been a desire to misidentify with a false ego self rather than the true spiritual self. This is death. And when you try to go against who you truly are, it does indeed feel like death. Unloving emotions of fear, confusion, doubt, and depression are a result of seeming to misidentify with ego. Having reinterpreted the definition of death to where it seems to be, being on the mind level, or misidentifying with the ego on the mind level, the true self then goes on to slowly unwind and plant seeds that there is a spiritual self beyond the self one thinks it is as a body, or a separate self in a separate world. Another metaphor to convey what is being said here is, imagine it is time for bed. You lay down in bed and go to sleep. While you are asleep and dreaming, you forget that you are dreaming, and you take on the misidentification with the dream figure and react to what may be occurring in the dream as if. Now the big word is as if it is real. The sleeping mind has forgotten that it is the dreamer of the dream, the mind in which the dream and the dream figure seem to arise within. It now perceives itself to be the dream figure in the dream that is at the mercy of the dream and everything in it. Having taken on the identity of the dream figure, it now perceives itself to have many problems, financial problems, health problems, relationship problems, etc. The mind training and lessons are designed to bring the mind to a state of lucid dreaming. This is why getting clear on purpose is so important. Where the purpose of the spirit is forgiveness, ultimately meaning bringing the false causation given to the world back to the level of the mind. As I said before, perception is an inroads into emotion, which is an inroads to thought, which is an inroads to belief, which is an inroads to the core desire or core focus to misidentify with a false sense of self and its unloving thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. Bringing the causation back to the level of mind, the level of misidentification with a false sense of self, it is here that the mind comes to what the Course refers to as a stepping stone, the decision maker, the dreamer of the dream, which is what non-dual calls awareness. The mind can then look upon the ego with non-judgment, in which its falsity is recognized, and then overlook the ego. Here, the mind remembers that there is no separate body in the dream, and no separate dream world apart or separate from the dream figure. It is all one false image happening in the mind of the dreamer, rather than separate images which have an existence in and of themselves. Spirit calls this fragmented perception. Through practical application of the course and transfer of training, bringing the false cause given to perception back to the level of the mind eventually opens to lucid dreaming and realizes the lesson title, There is no death, meaning that there is no ego. It is an illusion, and illusions do not exist. The dreamer of the dream is never bound to any laws or things that may be happening in the dream, and that the Son of God, being the true self in bed back at home with God, is actually free. Realizing that one is essentially the formless presence of awareness and ultimately the abstract light behind the sleeping mind of awareness, then the death of the body means nothing. This is why Jesus said, "Let the dead bury the dead." The sleeping mind perceives the death of the body as loss of some kind, as it perceives communication with a loved one has ended for good at that point. However, this is all based on a misidentification with the body, as the mind of the dreamer is not lost once the body is laid aside. When the mind experientially awakens to the light of unconditional love beyond the body identification, it is actually a celebration of life. Imagine going back home after being lost and your parents go, "Woohoo! Yeah, Dylan, you're back! Woohoo!" And there's a big celebration. This is what we are being called to reperceive death as. It is actually a celebration of life. Just as in the parable told by the prodigal son, the feeling of coming back home to who you truly are is an experience of great joy, peace, and love, that the idea of weeping over the body will seem totally laughable. Life has no opposite. Life is beyond birth and death. Life is beyond images, for life is love, life is joy, and life is eternal and limitless, that can never be contained in anything limited or temporary. Life is a state of mind. The deaf or unloving attack thoughts of the ego are unreal and are no longer invested in, as death on the physical level was just a projection or distraction away from the choice to misidentify with the ego and its unloving thoughts on the mind level. This was just a misperception. The world you think you see and the thoughts you think are the same. And if we have when I was back in school, they used to have these overhead projectors, and the teacher would plug the overhead projector in, and there would be this beam of light, and this would be projected onto the whiteboard as just this beautiful, beautiful, pure light. But once the teacher placed the overlays on the light, then come this darkened world. And this is very symbolic of the ego's thinking. That the ego's thinking is what, just like the overhead projector metaphor, behind these images is just pure light. But once you add the overlays on top of the light, then there starts to be a world formed. And this is why the spirit here is saying the world you think you see and the thoughts you think are one and the same. Through tracing the causation given to the world of perception back to the level of the mind, then what is false, being the ego, is seen as false, and what is true, who you truly are, or spirit, is seen as true. When the truth is seen as true, and only the truth is seen as true, it is experientially recognized that nothing can come to circumvent love or eternity, save in dreams which are unreal. This is what the Course refers to as the happy dream of non-judgment. The dreamer of the dream perspective is the happy dream. Happy because there is no judgment placed onto what is seen as false. It still seems to be a perception. The body still seems to be active, yet the unreal voice of judgment and all of its unreal effects have been laid aside or given no reality in mind. One dreams softly of sinlessness, of divine innocence before waking up to the light and unconditional love of heaven. Eventually, the lasting love, peace, and joy of being, which is the will of God, prevails always, which is always depicted in all of the fairy tale stories of earth. Now, how beautiful is that? How beautiful is that? That we have this beautiful opportunity now to re-perceive everything with the light of truth and with the light of love. You know, Paul in the movie was such a beautiful representation of the fruits of the Spirit. He never wavered away from truth, from love. You know, even when the community, those in the community come to break him out, he knew that wasn't the way. And so he stayed. Because for the love of the Roman guard, I forgot his name, you know, the love is so immense that you wouldn't put the Roman guard in that position of facing execution, even though he seems to be the one that the world would call the oppressor. You know, you love everyone so much that you've, you know, because of forgiveness, that you overlook their actions. You overlook the worldly appearance. You overlook their roles. You even overlook their beliefs to see the light within, which is who they truly are. The only reason why we have conflicts with our brothers is because we equate our brothers with their beliefs. We equate our brothers with the ego. Yet the ego is the only one that can be wrong. The ego is the only one that can be argumentative, and no one is the ego. So imagine waking up every day and with this attitude that everyone is right. How would you experience the day with this attitude? Someone comes to you, oh, God is a pink fluffy cloud in the sky. Yeah, man, yeah, and we cheer them on. You know, we don't try to critique them. We don't try to go, well, you're wrong. I don't think so. You know, we know in our heart what is true, so there's no need to convince anyone else. You know, when we're on the spiritual journey, it is quite easy for us to slip into projection as well. Now that I have learned what people-pleasing is, and I know I shouldn't be people-pleasing, wait a minute, that guy over there is people-pleasing. You should not be people-pleasing. Are they really people-pleasing? Or are they just playing their role perfectly to reflect what is going on in your mind? You know, you have the box of people-pleasing in your mind, and this gets projected out onto others as if they are people-pleasing. Everything you seem to perceive during the day is just a reflection of your mind. There is really no one else out there to try and convince. There is no one really out there to try and people please. You know, everyone is playing their part perfectly in order for your awakening. You know, those who trust in the Lord, everything works out together for the good. So you can see how deep we seem to be going here. And even though we seem to be going very deep, this is still, you know, this is still beyond surface level or deep. You know, the true self is already awakened. You know, once you step off the ladder and you see that there's no ladder, you see that you were never the ego. And so there was never anything to forgive. And the highest point that we are being led to is this place where we even can disregard the course, because the course's purpose is just to allow you to forgive. But if forgiveness is still a stepping stone, then you can see how where this is leading. Now, my journey. Now, one day I was like, "Oh man, I've devoted my entire life to this book and forgiveness, and now I'm seeing that forgiveness, it's still an illusion. It's a belief. There's really nothing to forgive." So I was mind blown at this point. I was like, "Whoa, whoa, wait a minute." So we can't even, identify with the course. I am a Course in Miracles teacher. I am a Course in Miracles student. You are beyond that. You are a child of light. You are a child of God. You can't even identify with the course, because the course is just a bunch of words. And as we know, words are twice removed from reality. Words point to meaning, and meaning points to the experience beyond the words. Wow, amazing. We are going for an experience here. We are going for a state of mind that is so lit up that you can endure being whipped, being in prison, and still know that everything is perfect, still know that nothing is going wrong, still be able to share the love despite the worldly circumstances. Think of today with lockdowns. Think of World War II, Nazi Germany concentration camps. Think back then in the movie when the Christians were being seemingly slaughtered. We're going for a transformation of mind that is so expansive and so beyond the thinking of the world that we overlook the false images of the world, that we overlook the worldly appearance, the changing images that seem to happen on the movie theater screen. And we are so invested in the white movie theater screen underneath the changing images that is our point. That is our point of focus. Which is why Paul was able to go through everything he seemed to experience, even death, with a gladdened mind. He never tried to resist. Oh my God, please, God, I don't want to die. No, he never said that at all. He just shared his love with the guard at the end. I forgot his name, but the main guy. And, he was sharing his analogy about scooping up the water and how those who live for Christ live for the endless ocean. When most of us in life, when we are misidentified with the ego, we are living for that scoop of water that we try to pick up with our hand. We are going for this expansive ocean. And so if you are ever on the journey and you feel like, man, where is this leading? I should just give up now. We are going through this experience of what was demonstrated in the movie. This expansive mindset, this endless love for everyone and everything. Even if your Hitler is standing in front of you, you have the capacity to say to Hitler, just as Jesus did on the cross, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They are just playing their part perfectly in order for me to be the demonstration of light, just as Jesus was. Let's take the example of Jesus going through the cross. Jesus never said, I don't want to go through this experience. Let me try and divert. He knew the body had to be crucified because he knew it was going to be used as a demonstration for the resurrection, and that the death of the body meant nothing. That's what the whole crucifixion was about. Hey, the body's death means you can't kill the Christ. You cannot kill the Christ. Hey, everybody. all of the thinking in the world, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about, come with me. Be of good cheer. He was sharing, be of good cheer. I am with you. Whatever trials and tribulations you seem to be going through your life, be of good cheer. You can go through it happily, with a happy mind, because I will take care of you. I am in charge of the plan of the atonement. If you believe that you have made a mistake, you are actually believing that I have made a mistake in the plan of atonement. And it can only be the ego that's saying that. We seem to give our life to God, but all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, who's actually caring for me? Who's going to pay my rent? Oh God, do you actually have my rent this week? And we're like peering around the corner, like, God, please, please, do you have me? We can't forget who we have given our life to in this life. We go through the course, we do the practical application, but we cannot forget who we have given our life to. And that's pretty important, because that who we have given our life to is the same presence that has raised the dead and done all of the miracles that have seemed to be performed by Jesus and many other mystics. That is who we have given our life to. And that is why we don't need to buy into the ego's doubt of, am I doing it right? We wake up in the morning and we're like, am I where I'm meant to be? Of course. Otherwise you wouldn't be there. Who are you doubting? Like, honestly, who are you doubting? You doubt God? Who's doubting God? The ego. So yeah, you don't really have to worry. So the mind that we are going to is a completely certain mindset where we don't experience the ego anymore. And even though initially there seems to be a lot of darkness and there seems to be a lot of, it can seem like you're in the big wash in the washing machine. Your mind's in the washing machine. You're like, oh, I have no clue what the hell's going on. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And the peaceful mind is no small gift, and it is the only thing in this world that can't fail. If you get a job, you can fail at your job, but going for peace of mind and going for what you already are cannot fail. If you're going for God, it can't fail. Why? Because you're already peace. The true self you already are is already beyond judgment. The true self you already are is already awake even. So it's not that difficult to actually awaken, because you are already awake in truth, which is why it is the only thing in this world that cannot fail. So you are putting all of your effort into what cannot fail. In other words, it's inevitable that you awaken. It's inevitable that you will experience consistent love. So just keep going with that same faith, and the rewards will be anything far greater than what this world has to offer. So yes. The main message of this movie is, whatever you seem to be going through, you can go through it with a sound mind and a happy mind, even if it's a sickness. Look at Ramana Maharshi. He seemed to develop, the body seemed to develop a tumor, but this was just used for the good, for allowing him to lay the body aside. It wasn't really a reflection of his state of mind. It was just part of the script. So you can just relax your mind into the script. And even if the body seems to be doing weird stuff, you can be like, okay, this is part of the script. It has nothing to do about me. But what does have to do about me is I now have this opportunity to experience and go through this in joy and happiness. Why? Because I am not placing any conditions any longer on my happiness. What is a condition? The body has to reflect good health for me to feel like I'm worthy and doing God's will and doing things great. No. The body can seem to be deteriorating. The body can seem to be crucified. Whatever the body seems to be doing, I can experience joy no matter what. And that is the experience that we are going for. Once again, Paul said, you are completely known and you are completely loved by God. There is nothing you seem to go through that God does not know about, that Jesus does not know about, that the Spirit does not know about. So whether you're having troubles with rent, whether you seem to be having relationship troubles, everything is known ahead of time. In the course, I think it might be the Bible. I don't know which one it is now. They all merge into one. It says, what does it say? It says, your needs will be provided before you even utter a word. Wow. Wow. Your needs will be provided before you even utter. Well, you don't even need to speak to have your needs provided. All you need to do is just be peaceful, to be still. It is all we're going. We're coming into an experience where we know we are so completely known and loved that I don't need to buy into the ego's chatter, chatter, chatter. I need to do this. I need to do that in the world in order to achieve money, in order to achieve this, in order to achieve that. No, all of that comes with a sound mind. Why? Because the script is written. You don't need to do anything. An example of this is the other day, because we're coming in the summer here, you know, a lot of people around here love ice cream. And a hot day as well, I like ice cream. So we went for a walk to get ice cream. And but those who I was with walked into the shop to get ice cream, and I stayed outside to talk with someone. Now, even though we were going there to get ice cream, I was really going there. I thought I was going to get ice cream, but what I was really going there was actually to talk to this guy that wanted to talk to me. And so everyone else got their ice cream. They came out and started, you know, they saw me talking, so they started walking just a little bit off just to walk back home. And after I had finished talking with the guy, I totally forgot about the ice cream. But I started walking back to catch up with the rest of the people that I was with. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I saw their ice cream. I was like, oh, man, I forgot my ice cream. But I was like, okay, I'll just walk with you home anyway. I'll walk home with you anyway. And when we got home, someone else who was at work stopped off at the supermarket and had brought a 2-liter tub of ice cream and brought it home with them. And you can see that even though I didn't get the ice cream and the way I thought I was going to get it, I still got ice cream later on in a 2-liter tub rather than a liquid one. So this is like a parable that shows you that even though what is meant for you will not pass you by. Now, what is meant for you will always come to you. And what is not meant for you will never, you won't experience it. So you can just relax and you can rest into the script, so to speak, and then you can just enjoy life. You know, you don't have to strive for things to happen in the world. You don't have to strive to get anything. What did Jesus say? Seek first the kingdom of heaven and everything else will be added on to you. And I have had plenty of experiences where I have been sitting all day, but all of a sudden things will come to me and I'll be like, what? I've been sitting here all day. How did that come to me? But that is just the power of spirit. Now, that is just the power of seeing the power of your state of mind